The next item on the agenda is a request to appeal a change of decision from the April 9th event in Plymouth, Aiello Vs Cardarelli. If I'm not mistaken, if you look at the minutes, it tells you that the last meeting we dealt with this, and it's item 6 on the minutes. Change of decision due to timekeeper error at the April 9th show, Aiello Vs Cardarelli. Just to familiarize everybody, Cardarelli was awarded a split decision against Aiello in Plymouth at the Cage Titan show. Cardarelli represented it on behalf of Remo. Cardarelli was present via telephone. Aiello was present. It's been confirmed that the timekeeper, Sean McGoyne, ended the fight at 3 minutes 43 seconds rather than the full 5 minutes. After discussion in reference to 523 CMR section 14.21, motion was made by Commissioner Krowski to change the decision from a split decision to a no contest. Second by Commissioner Licciardi. Motion was passed by unanimous vote. So that's what action was taken at that last meeting. There's now a request before us. Is it a formal request in writing, and do we have a copy of it?
I have one idea.
So basically, it looks to me as though that Cardarelli is indicating that he was never noticed at the hearing, and our regs require that it goes out, and normally we do that to whatever address we have on file through their license application.
It was the request. The request for the appeal from Andy Aiello was put before the commission. It wasn't a hearing, so it was just put before you all to review, to decide whether or not you were going to, if you felt it had warrant, and that's not how it ended up going.
Right, so Mr. Chairman, if I could just say
Go ahead,
about, so under 523 CMR 14.21, no fighter has a right for this commission to overturn or even examine a decision. They certainly can, under the regulations, request that this commission review the decision, but it's not the same thing as having a right. And there being no right attaching, there's no right to a hearing. So whether there was, sufficient notice from Cardarelli or anyone else's point of view, the notice of the meeting is legally sufficient. That said, they're here today if you want to hear from them. It has been put on the agenda.
Well, the request was made. You just heard from our counsel, but certainly you're here. We're happy to hear from you.
My name is Mark Cardarelli. I'm Raymond Cardarelli, the manager of Office Dad, obviously. When I was notified of the actual meeting, it was approximately an hour and a half before the actual meeting. So I didn't have actually time to prepare or to even discuss or look at the rules and regulations of the 523 CMR. So as we look into that, and even as we start to debate in that meeting, there's certain rules and regulations that, of course, I didn't have the CMR in front of me. I couldn't reference them and have a rebuttal to as far as why that's inaccurate. So even on the decision, and if you want to look at the decision and why it came to that decision, it's actually completely inaccurate. To say or to state in there, if you look through the form, it states that one, they referenced again, it's 1421. Paragraph 1, 2, and 3, as far as the rules to overturn a decision made by the judges. So the decision was made unanimously, by split decision, that Rainbow Cardarelli won that fight. To overturn that is to say that the referee made an inaccurate decision, or he announced the wrong winner. So if you're looking at the rules and regulations, that paragraph is designed in states that says, hey, I made the wrong decision, I awarded the wrong person the win. That wasn't the case. You look at the three, it's like saying, all right, we added the wrong scorecard, or there was coercion. So none of those three things even apply to this application. And even when it was discussed, it says, well, it could have been worded better. Well, the problem was we were taking something out of context and trying to fit it into a situation. Now, the timekeeper made an error. It's simply that. It's an error. 2 fighters went in for 14 minutes. 1 person came out the winner. The judges awarded the winner. If accidents like this is going to happen all the time, if we do this, we open up the opportunity for other people to come and say, hey, oh, I didn't get the entire round. I didn't get, my 5 minutes of, an opportunity to knock that guy out. Well, first, do you guys know when the actual round starts? Does anybody here know when the round starts based on 523 CMR?
When the bell,
I'm sorry?
I believe it reads when the bell rings.
Correct. It reads when the bell rings, and that's the actual ruling, or an audible device. But how do we start every round? The referee starts the round by saying, are you ready? Are you ready? Let's fight. No sound, no audible device actually goes off. So when do we know when to actually start the round? See, by overturning this decision, we're creating a problem for ourselves. And I'm not here to argue the rules, and I'm actually one who would love to help to rewrite the rules or apply it to the referee saying, hey, let's start it, but the rules are there for a reason. It's a guideline for us to make decisions. When we're sitting here today and we're making those decisions where I, again, wasn't familiar with those rules, otherwise I would have stated that. I actually thought Aiello and his team was here saying, hey, if I had 1 more minute, I would have won. That's my approach to that conversation. By them saying, oh, well, it was a mistake made by the referee. Actually, it's not the mistake made by the referee, because he does not start the round and he doesn't end the round based on 523 CMR. The bell does, and the timekeeper does. And what happens if the timekeeper makes an error based on his audible device? If it runs out of batteries or the clock's not calibrated correctly? Could you say, hey, you know what? It may have been off by 10 seconds. Well, look in the UFC, the fastest knockouts in UFC history. Starts off with 10 seconds, and there's 10 fastest knockouts under 10 seconds. That's just in the UFC. That doesn't mean MMA in a whole. So when do we go and change that? When do we have the opportunity that the lawyers are going to change the judge's ruling? The judges made the decision. It's very simple. It's very clear. Took the opportunity to kind of twist the rules and regulations to apply to a situation that's completely unfair. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this is Rainbow, he actually didn't even know that the meeting was even held, the meeting even came to a decision, because I actually worked that night, and he didn't know until Friday. So the meeting was held on a Thursday, he was notified Friday that it was actually overturned. And I was actually notified to say, hey, listen, they're going to meet on this to actually put it on the schedule for an official hearing. So to me it was, okay, it was let's talk about it, let's see if there's something that, warrants being put on the agenda. And it was decided on that day. So therefore to me, it was an injustice to Ramo and for his opportunity to be present and actually to hear what he has to say and to abut or look at the rules and regulations to confirm that these alleged, mistakes were made and properly presented.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I could, just comment on the argument being made under the regulations. He's correct that the regulations state the commission will not change a decision at the end of any contest unless, and then the 3 provisions are, if there was collusion, if there was compilation of the scorecards of the judges disclosing an error, showing the decision was given to the wrong person, or if, as a result of an error in interpreting a provision of the chapter, the referee has rendered an incorrect decision. So all of that said, the commission does have wide-ranging discretion with respect to applying its rules and regulations. and in fact has broad discretion to grant a variance with respect to any single one of its regulations. So you're allowed to overturn the decision for factors other than these, but I guess I would caution you to think very carefully about that, because it will set a precedent.
I don't disagree.
Can I just mention one more thing, sir? Is on the CMR, when we look at some of the things, some of the other provisions in the CMR, and we look at these unforeseen circumstances. If you look at the CMR, it's, again, I have it written down in there, but CMR 1604, paragraph 5. If a fight is stopped due to an injury caused by an accidental foul or for any unforeseen circumstance, the round of the stoppage shall be scored and counted using a 10-point must system if the round is at least halfway complete. If the referee penalizes either an non-combatant in an incomplete round, the appropriate points must be deducted. So therefore, this lines up with an unforeseen circumstance where the the timekeeper mistakenly started the time, the time clock at the wrong time, right? So what happens is someone goes and pulls a fire alarm, or the lights shut off, or what happens? It goes right to the 10-point must system, right? What if someone, parachutes in? Because it's an open stadium. We've never seen that, right? Yeah, a guy parachuted into a boxing match and they stopped the rounds. All right, well, what do we do? So guess what we got to do in this situation? We go to the 10-point must system, and that's exactly what these judges did. Regardless of, I understand, yes, it needs to be a 5-minute round, but there's nothing that states if it's not a 5-minute round, well, it's, now it's ruled and no contest.
Okay, thank you. One question I would raise is options available to the commission right now, considering that, number one, it was not a formal hearing that was held, nor is there a right to a hearing, but we heard this at a regular scheduled meeting. The decision, I think, was made with counsel, present company excluded, but there was counsel here who the interpretation was questioned, and counsel basically assured the commission that it was within their purview based on one of these 3 points that it was an available decision, and it was within their purview to move forward with a change.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the commission can always change its mind. You can reconsider any decision that you make for the most part and change course, but of course there are ramifications for that.
So that if going forward, if the commission were to consider the request, is the correct request appropriate in that there's a formal request to appeal the change of the decision from that. So is that a proper request to ask for the appeal? So the question for us today is, do we agree to, based on what we hear and what we know so far, is it enough to convince this commission to allow for an appeal to be scheduled and to go forward? And Kyla Chadi, go ahead.
I just wanted to bring up, because I was at the last meeting, and I think the decision was made because the referee then was there then and he's here now. It was based, our decision was based on the referee making the decision based on a bad information he was given. That's where we took a kind of a stretch on the rule. The referee called a stop based on the round ending per the bell going off a minute and some odd seconds too soon.
And my response to that would be that's unfortunate. However, it took place. It feels to me, and I'm confused by the previous decision, and I'm respectful of a previous decision. But as I sit here right now, it seems to me, if I'm Ramo, why am I punished for a technical or whatever kind of the mistake that was made? Why, if I was found to, they went to a 10-point mark, how they decided Ramo won the fight, how then does a win turn into a no decision? I'm sorry, a no decision, no contest. I'm sorry, I apologize, no contest. how does a win that I've trained months for or whatever, I don't need to get in all that level of detail, but how does a win turn into a no contest and it's beyond, like I had nothing to do with it. I went out and fought as hard as I could and I won a fight and I'm proud of the win, and now something bell didn't go off or a battery, whatever, and now I'm being penalized. And so I'm just a little conflicted. I would look at this as pretty straightforward, as why would you penalize a young man that's trained hard and want to fight? But I'm conflicted because it's a previous decision and maybe by people that are much more knowledgeable than myself having made that decision. So that's where I stand right now. Without that decision, I would move to, grant the win.
Request for hearing.
That's where I would go with this.
Request for a hearing or not, or hey, a guy won the fight.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we don't need a further hearing, it's just a decision on whether to overturn the fight.
And then we look at, sorry, just 2 seconds, and then if you look at the criteria, we're not, which is again makes it a little confusing. I wasn't at the last meeting, so, but the criteria doesn't seem to meet, the rationale didn't meet the criteria we need to look at. So, to me, without that previous meeting, I would sit here right now and put a motion on the table to award the fight to Ramo and get on with our business.
So in other words, to reverse the commission's previous decision back in the May meeting.
Correct, and that wasn't a motion yet, it was just, I think, further discussion required, but without that bit of information, I would not hesitate to now it is a reversal.
Commissioner Walker, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with everything that's saying, after hearing you guys speak. But the only issue I have is that I want to make the best decision based on all the information. And I feel like I'm only hearing one side. It sounds like you guys are right. I mean, it's just, but if there was a reason last week that this decision was made. And so I'm just feeling like we need to hear it all.
The decision was made based on everybody's feelings towards the matter individually, and with some counsel from at that time, counsel who was present,
right,
who thought that there was an interpretation that could be found, and I believe it was in item 3,
right.
That could give them the confidence, and maybe a stretch or whatever, but it certainly was within the commission's purview to make that call and to give it make it a no contest, as it is in this commission's purview today,
right,
to reverse that. And we
don't take that lightly. We don't take that lightly at all. What was the unanimous
Sure.
vote, or how? And are there folks here that can speak to that conversation?
Sure.
Yeah, look, a guy did. He was here. Excuse me. 1 second. Did you want to add anything further?
No, I think the decision was made because everybody looked at that item 3, and like I said, it was a stretch to say that it was basically that the referee stopped the fight based on bad information, and the bad information was the time. Didn't come up at the right time.
And did anyone at that time, and I'm sorry, the gentleman had a question as well, but just to see the train of thought, what was the dialogue relative to, technical error, mistake, purposeful, no big deal? What was there any conversation as it relates to why does this go back on Ramo?
I believe that I was there, and that was part of my, again, looking at it from a stretch to understand that, because I questioned that, are we stretching too far or not? And I put that to the council, who came back and said, no, I think that we're certainly there to be able to do this based on that information. And
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you this?
1 minute. So that being said, there was question on it. And go ahead.
Joe Leonard, Western Mass MMA. If the council wanted to take a break for a few minutes and watch the video of the last month's meeting, I have it on my website. So you could see exactly what was said, who said it, hear the testimony from the person, Aiello, who made the...
Well, for
It's
me,
not very long. I'm going to guess that the whole...
It's about 20 minutes.
I prefer to get it resolved today.
Sure.
Because keep pushing things off.
One more.
Yeah.
Okay, also ahead. Raymond?
May I say something?
Sure.
I have the same feeling as Mac does completely. as far as like, it goes back to just besides the rules. I think we pointed out, and my manager, also my dad, has also pointed out specifically affecting the rules. Just from my side of it, as a fighter personally, I share the same feeling that Matt does. But also, we went 3 rounds. Okay, nobody had an advantage or disadvantage. Yes, you can make the argument. Okay, we went, I forget the exact time, but it was over halfway through the last round. Okay, that the fight was stopped prematurely. Okay, but those minutes were fought already. Nobody was given an advantage nor disadvantage in the fight. You can make the argument that yes, in that remaining time, somebody could have submitted, knocked out, whatever have you, to win the fight. That's equal opportunity for both fighters. So that's the only thing that I want to add. The judge based it upon the minutes that were fought and not that last minute and 15 seconds that was not fought. So I feel, again, this is an unforeseen circumstance, but I don't feel like I should be getting punished and getting my loss taken away that, as before said, that I've trained hard for many months, and worked my ass off to get in there and fight a ridiculous amount, and to get that taken away from me due to a minute and 15 seconds. That the judges that nobody had an disadvantage over or an advantage over, I think is a little excessive.
All right, thank you. Anybody else in the audience want to weigh in on this? Go ahead.
Multiple vacations. I was at both meetings, and I think this simply comes down to what rule is applying to this fight. In Aiello's camp, it was tied to Section 3, which admittedly they said was loosely based on Section 3, which was a referee's error. And I think the reason the decision was made that day, because there was no counterpoint to that, bringing up another rule that's later on in the CMRs that say unforeseen circumstance. So, you ask, why did they make that decision there? Because the only case that was presented at that time was Section 3, which is a referee's error. Now, I'm not saying I'm not going to offer my advice which way I'm leaning towards, but I think to answer your question, why it was made that decision, because truthfully, both sides weren't present, and it was unfair. I hear what you're saying about you don't have a right to be overturned, but we just went through a song and dance with Matt Michelle and Travis Brown, trying to get them to come to
Quite a different situation.
Well,
there was clearly a right to a hearing there, as this was.
But you're trying to overturn. He's trying to get a decision overturned as well. But his has been played out for 4 months now, and in a matter of 15 minutes, you guys made a different decision on the local level. Is it because he's in the UFC? We don't have to go down that road, but to our point earlier that he didn't have a right to be here. Well, and Mitrione doesn't have to be right to be here. Travis Brown doesn't have a right to be here. But we're going to song and dance this for 4 more months to try to get a decision on that. I think it's unfortunate.
And either way, with all due respect, we've got guys that are in, others out of state. I mean, I do think there's a lot of moving parts to that. I think there's a lot, with all due respect, I think there's a lot of moving parts.
Well, what's the difference in moving parts? Is it because it's UFC fighters from...
No. It's clearly that once the hearing was set up and a decision was made, they were entitled to a hearing, and it was a hearing as opposed to last meeting was not a hearing. They all have the right to be there for a hearing.
And I also, if we could, just because I have my limitations, my ADD will kick in.
Yeah.
We can stick to this issue. I think that'd be terrific.
I agree.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so the point's well taken, and I think, there's having an actual right to a hearing, and then there's also even-handedness in how you're treating others equally, and, they're both the same type of proceeding, asking for a decision to be overturned. They absolutely are. But I do think that both sides have now been heard. So at the previous meeting, you got to hear from one side, and at this meeting, you got to hear from the other. And I do think that the commission is, in my view, well equipped to either decide to reverse their decision or to uphold it.
Well, it's up to you if you want to take the amount of time it would take to set up.
I don't want to take the amount of time, but if you need my vote, it would not be fair for me not to see. It's just like last week. It's the exact reason you guys are here. You're like, listen, you didn't hear our side. Now it's the other guy. I'm not hearing their side. So
I tend to agree with that.
yeah.
Well, if you want to,
can you do this without me?
you know,
I don't agree with you. I think that we need to know that we have a quorum. If you're going to tell us you're abstaining on
If
the phone,
you
we
can
don't
cue
have
that
a
up,
quorum.
if you can cue that up,
Yep.
I just assume take a quick peek at that and then let's take a vote.
Fair enough? Yeah.
I'll bring it right over to
The
you.
teacher's on the phone, do they need three present, or?
Is Letitia still on the phone?
No.
No.
Oh, okay, you need it.
Huh? That would be you. Yes, got it.
She was only after you.
Oh, come on, that's-
It's on record, guys.
However, I definitely always want that. It has to be fair across the board.
Yeah.
What I'm looking at is more, look at the rules and regulations. You know, regardless of.
No, I've heard you loud
I
and
definitely
clear.
want you to have,
Yeah.
everybody's input needs to be involved.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, you know, for me, my expectations was to come in and we're gonna go to another date.
Yeah.
Because that's, you know,
Well, you don't want to have us vote,
Absolutely.
and then the other guy, I'm not
Sure.
getting their names right,
Yeah.
but then he comes back and says, well, he didn't, it's just going to
But
resolve
I
it.
just want to just make one point on this, right? There's one point that I want to make is that how does somebody come to the board and states, hey, I lost. I got a technicality that's going to wipe that loss from my record. To me, it's like, it's the approach. What's the, the back story behind me bringing this? If he had won that and the roles were reversed, I guarantee you, this guy would have showed up and said, can we appeal this?
Because I lost the damn fight. I got my
All right.
oral
Yeah.
back.
They're gonna watch.
Okay, we can have a quiet now so that we can catch up with this and.
We have Mark Cardarelli on the phone. All right, Mr. Cardarelli, this is Letitia Adams, Chair of the Athletic Commission. How are you?
I'm doing well, yourself?
I'm good, thank you. All right, we're talking about the event that took place on April 9th with Andy Aiello and your son Remo. Is it Remo Cardarelli. Okay, so again, there was a split decision win by the judges. Mr. Cardarelli was the winner. It was later discovered that the timekeeper ended the fight at the 4-minute mark instead of the 5-minute mark that it was scheduled. A letter has been submitted to have the decision changed due to that error in the timekeeper.
Just factually for the record, I think it was 3:43, so about a minute and 15 seconds early it ended.
Okay. All right. And my understanding is that we do have confirmation from on our side that is in fact what happened without having to look at a video.
Yes, I was at the fight, and there is confirmation that the fight in the third round. Commissioner Krowski, for the record, I don't know if Mr. Cardarelli can hear me on the phone as well.
Can you hear
Yes, I
me?
can hear you.
Okay.
If the chair will allow, I'll give a little bit of a factual overview because I was present for the
Yes,
fight.
please.
This was the main event contest between Mr. Cardarelli and Mr. Aiello. First, let me just say it was a hard-fought, excellent, fantastic fight. Both fighters came prepared, were in tremendous shape. And the decision was a very close decision. I think if I'm correct, it was a split, 29-28, 28-29, 29-28. I sat cage side at the fight. In the third round, the warning clock sounded, signifying that there were 10 seconds left. At that point in time, Mr. Aiello was in the process of sinking in a rear naked choke. Both fighters were standing. The warning, I think it was someone hit the warning block with 10 seconds to go. Instinctively, it seemed early to me, but then the fight ended and the decision was declared. I was leaving, and it came to our attention that someone had been videotaping the entire fight, and that what happened, I guess the timekeeper didn't start the fight on time, and the fight was actually stopped at the 3:43-minute mark and went to a decision without a full lawfully timed round being completed. It's a shame that we're here because both fighters just, put their heart into it. It was a tremendous fight, but certainly, it's a problem that we have to address, and I Are we going to watch the video? I think they have the video to.
They had a hard time getting it going.
I don't think we need to.
I don't think we need to. I think it's established in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get the video. I do have it.
We have it
watch
too.
it. On the red naked choke part, there was it wasn't even sunk in, and even not even close. Rainbow was against the fence. He pulled it. He got an underhook and was out of that within 10 seconds.
Mr.
So you can confirm that obviously when you see the video.
Oh, I didn't.
Mr.
Can I respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Cardarelli, Commissioner Krauske again. I didn't mean to suggest that the rear naked choke had been landed and sunk in. Just from my observation and my looking, that's what the process, he was in the process of doing that. I think instinctively every fighter has an interior fight clock, and it looked like the position of the fighters changed once the 10-second warning went off.
And I think, Mr. Cardarelli, you said you watched the fight. Are you in agreement that the fight was ended in the 3-minute 43-second, on the 3-minute 43-second mark, and not the 5-minute mark as was scheduled?
Correct. Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes, no, I agree. The only thing that, the point that I was trying to do is, when I was in the corner, Dr. B had yelled several times to Kevin and said, Kevin, you need to stop the fight. We need to check Andy's eye. It was completely closed, and he kept saying it multiple times. And then in that event, I actually started to say to Kevin, I said, Kevin, check his eye. His eye is closed. Obviously, for us, and you know me, I mean, a lot of folks know me, where I'm more about the fighter safety. And I feel, had Kevin stopped that, I think it would have been a doctor stoppage. And of course, I don't want to speak for Dr. B, but I think that conversation should be had with Dr. B to say, hey, what was going through your mind at that point? And you folks can see, I mean, I did, however, text Jen the photo of Andy immediately after the fight was stopped, and you can see that his eye is completely closed.
Oh, I don't know if you want me to respond.
Yeah.
The problem that we're going to start running into, and I totally respect what Mr. Cardarelli is saying about fighter safety, is because we were deprived of that minute and 15 seconds, we can't really engage in speculation as to what would or what would not have happened. I think the fundamental problem we're dealing with is the regulation requires 3 5-minute rounds unless it's stopped for another reason, such as a knockout or a technical knockout or a doctor stoppage. We didn't have that. It was stopped based on an error, and I'm not just going to say of the timekeeper. We're all in this together. It was a commission error, not giving both fighters the opportunity to complete a 5-minute round. But I do respect, Mr. Cardarelli, what you're saying. I don't want to come off as adversarial to you. I'm just telling you from a commission perspective, my perspective, what I'm troubled by in this situation.
Sure. No, I understand what you're saying, and it's definitely, I mean, the rules are the rules, and it's unfortunate we're here. I just see that I'm actually a little disappointed that someone's going to argue the fact that, it was clearly that, based on the damage that he sustained, that he's going to argue that, he wants to wipe it from his record because of a technicality. And that's kind of where I'm sitting at this point. We're saying, well, it's pretty disappointing that we're going to try to use a technicality to sway a record. And from what I understand is that I don't even think he's going to be fighting anymore. So I don't even understand that piece of it either.
Who was not going to fight it?
Aiello?
Yeah, I believe Mr. Aiello had said that he's no longer going to be competing.
That could change next week.
We have, Mr. Aiello is actually sitting here at the meeting. You want to comment on?
Yeah, so Andy Aiello, I plan on buying that.
Okay, great.
So I think that what it comes down to, unfortunately, is that because it was a commission error, I mean, it basically leaves us with no choice but to change the decision to a no contest. I mean, that's our rules.
That takes me to my point. There are 3 sets of criteria where a decision can be changed. Do we happen to have a copy of those?
I was trying to find it here.
May I have it?
19.21.
Because there are many requests for various reasons. This one, based on my memory of those criteria, may well fit in there. And the council, you have nodding that based on your review of it, it would appear that it's an opportunity for us to be able to rule on this if we choose.
That is my opinion.
Okay, and that's what I thought. It's many times we have been requested, and the items clearly do not fall within our purview, and they seem to be obvious things, but they're not within our guidelines that allow us to do make any changes. Before we would take a vote on it, I would ask if there is anybody here, since one of the fighters is here and it's going to affect him. I think we could hear from both sides. Mr. Cardarelli obviously is on the phone. Mr. Aiello is here. If he wishes to speak to this, I'd like to hear it before we entertain a vote or an action.
And his management and trainer is also there. If you guys, this is your opportunity if you want to make any comment.
If we just have 1 moment to the chair.
Sure.
Prior request to.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so these, Rule 14.21, change of decision after contest or exhibition, factors considered by the commission. The commission will not change a decision rendered at the end of any contest or exhibition unless the commission determines that there was a collusion affecting the result of the contest or exhibition. The compilation of scorecards of the judges discloses an error which shows that the decision was given to the wrong unarmed combatant, or as a result of an error in interpreting a provision of this chapter, the referee has rendered an incorrect decision.
I'm not sure that any one of those tell me where this falls into line. Clearly not the first one, not the second one. Number 3.
Number 3.
Repeat that.
It could be worded more. It could be worded better.
Could be more artful, right?
Yes, but I believe number 3 encompasses something.
All right, I'd like to think about that, but in the meantime, if we can hear from anyone else who would care to weigh in on this.
Kevin McDonald, referee, bottom question. Regarding that number 3 there, I believe it could possibly be interpreted as I was given the incorrect time, there was an error made because I called the halt to the bout prematurely based on the information that was given. So I think that kind of fall under.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Any other?
Anybody else have anything?
I have one more comment, and this is collateral to this. Clearly, Mr. Cardarelli, we're going to take a vote after this. Can you still hear me?
Yes, sir.
I should have started out by apologizing. Your son fought his heart out. We made a mistake. Human beings make a mistake. The commission made a mistake that night. We probably, in the future, want to revisit allowing this expansion to 19 fights. It's a very taxing evening for a lot of the officials. That 15 number is in there for a reason. We might want to revisit. I know that's not music to Mr. Polver's ears, but it's something we really have to consider.
I mean, unless you want to hire 2 timekeepers, pay for the timekeepers.
I think that was part of the problem on that evening. It's a long night.
Yeah, it's a long
These
night.
guys have put in a full day at work many times.
Yeah.
They've driven maybe an hour or 2 hours to the event. They've worked at the event for 5 or 6 hours. They're there an hour and a half early. They're there 6-7 hours, and now they've got a 14-15 hour day going in. And that's a very valid point. Swapping off of 2 timekeepers gives them a little bit of, they want when you got more than 15.
Michael Paul there, and I'm glad to speak on the topic. Maybe it's not what people want to hear, but this is not the first time that this has happened where timekeepers have messed up, specifically at my show. And if you want to bring into consideration, the fact that it was the last fight of the night, I don't think that has any play in this, because when it happened prior, it happened during Frank Sforza and Taylor Trahan fight, which was fight 11 over the course of the night. So I think that, yes, we can give excuses and allow some, oh, it was too late of a night or this, that, and the other thing, but there's other circumstances where officials have missed the boat.
Would you make a suggestion on what you think going forward so that it doesn't happen?
There has to be some sort of, I mean, it's clear that in the video, the timekeeper was more concerned on what the score was going into the third round than he was to starting the clock. I mean, it's clear as day in the video. He was more talking to the scorekeeper about what score, who's winning going into this third round, because it was a very engaging fight. And it's, you know, I'm not for the thing being overturned or not being overturned, but it's an unfortunate situation that we're in. We had a great fight, and here at Cage Titans, it's dragged into a little bit of a situation where, once again, at our show, we've had a commission screw up, for lack of a better word. I think that switching out timekeepers, I don't know if that's going to change it. I think that in this scenario, he was more concerned about knowing the score going into this third round and being excited and talking to his buddy that was sitting next to him than he was on watching the time clock. I mean, it's clear
that's
as day.
something that we can address with the time.
And we are going to.
Yeah, and I don't think that changing the amount of bouts from 18 to 15 or this to that would have changed the scenario at all because it's happened prior. So I don't think that should be even a topic of discussion.
I think it may not. You might be right that it may not have changed this particular scenario, but I do know that timekeepers get tired after a 19-hour, 19 fight.
We've had people complain before this.
Right. This is not the first time that we've had issues with timekeepers being worn out, basically. So I think that having two timekeepers is a good thing.
If that's the conversation, is, you know, possibly about two timekeepers, that's different, or limiting the amount of fights. It seemed like that where it might have dragged.
But,
you know, we were out by midnight, which was sooner than, you know, there could be 12 fights and you're not out. UFC, you're not out by midnight. The main event's going on by midnight. We were in the cage at 12:03 when the decision was about to be read, because I made a joke about it to Andy and to Ramos specifically. I promise we'll be out here by 12, and you'll be on by 12. And not only were they on by 12, the fights were over by 12:03. So I don't think time is as important.
I think it may not be just the time, it's the fact that they're doing 19 fights as opposed to 14, 15 fights. I think that makes a difference, and I think we put two timekeepers in there, we can help.
And just finally, for the record, no excuses. The job was to keep the time wasn't kept right. We're going to certainly, as a commission, work to clean up whatever errors are being made. No one's making any excuses.
Right.
Point of order, I'm sure we could hear from, or give Mr. Cardarelli the last opportunity to
Ms. Cardarelli, do you have any further comments or questions, concerns?
No, I think we kind of went over some of the points that I wanted just to make was those things, just not to sort of sway the decision some way, but I think just hope that everybody would keep an account of some of the facts that I brought up today.
May I pick one of the points that was brought up a bit further, and that was on the doctor and the fact that the eye was closed and that the doctor was in fact speaking to should it be looked at or not. And I just, because Kevin is here and his name was mentioned on it, did you want to speak to that at all?
Oh, sure. Kevin McDonald, Dr. Belinas and I spoke after the fight regarding what happened, and he did, out of the corner of my eye, you know, he raised concern. I heard something along the lines of check, you know, look at his eye or something like that. At no point did I see Mr. Aiello. The reasons we stop a fight is either if the doctor, in most states, it's either the referee calls a halt to the bout at the advisement of the doctor, but that means either the referee calls the doctor in or the doctor formally stops the bout. Neither of that took place, or if he was from the side, I wasn't aware, whether it's the deputy that comes in or however. I knew that his eye was banged up. It was the main event of a pro fight, big fight, and at no point did he demonstrate anything which showed that his vision was being affected. At no point did he, sort of change his fighting style.
Whose eye was it?
Okay. And it was interesting because when I did hear the doctor, shout that, again, I'm paying attention to the bout when I hear what's going on. When I heard him shout that, at that point, I saw Mr. Aiello shoot in for a takedown. And it was almost like he caught it too and realizes, so he shoots in to protect it, whether it's keep it out of the view or take away that, chances of getting punched real bad, you know, it was what it was. It's not appropriate.
Okay. And on that, I was going to wait till after this was over. I agree with Kevin that, you know, when the fight's going on, the referee's in charge of that ring. You know, people are constantly yelling stuff into the referees, and if they paid attention to all of that, you know, I was at another fight where somebody yelled over to Kevin an issue, and you know, Kevin's in charge. When it was over, he came over and said, "Do me a favor, don't go yelling stuff," and he was right. So even if it's the doctor, the referee's in charge of that ring, and if he sees something, he'll call it. And in this case, he was aware of it, and he also heard the doctor calling it. But you know, some of these doctors, Dr. Hayes not new, but there's a place for it. And during the recess, he could have said to Kevin, "Let's check his eye," and made a decision at that point. But not yelling stuff in while the fight's going on.
Right.
Okay, I don't think it was mentioned, I just wanted to get clarity on it, we had everybody here.
One other thing I just wanted to offer, when you mentioned as far as any possible things with the timekeepers, I help staff shows in multiple states, and I mean, up in Maine, it's insane. There's nights we've done 31 bouts in a night, and what I found is that when you hire, whether it be an extra judge or you have your timekeeper and or scorekeeper also be a licensed judge. That way you prevent two things. You get to rotate positions, so people aren't constantly focused on, you know, certain things. But you also, what I found is I've never once had a timekeeper come out, you know, certain things have been long nights, but I find judging to be much more mentally taxing than timekeeping. I mean, timekeeping, you have a set thing. You don't have to pay attention to the bout, you pay attention to the clock. But what I found is when you have a judge who is already invested in the sport itself, who is on that time clock or is on those score sheets, they're into it. They're you know, as opposed to taking somebody else and just sitting and then they're saying, you know, you're the judge, thank you. But I just found twofold because, again, this is a small community, so there's oftentimes judges that may have conflicts of interest with certain fighters or fight camps, but they may not want to come forward and say it because they think they won't get work or whatever. But when you already have someone else there, hey, you know what? Why don't you jump into the timekeeper spot? You know, you tell the commission. You say, okay, why don't you swap these guys and everything.
I love that idea. Love that idea.
Great.
Okay, so
Anything else, Mr. Cardarelli?
That is it.
Are we ready to take a vote?
Somebody needs to make a
I'll make a motion to change the result of that from a decision win for Mr. Cardarelli to a no contest based upon commission error.
Second that.
awesome.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And through the chair, while we're queuing this up.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to give an official referee that night for this, you know, what was the status and opinion of the fight when
When the 10-second warning went off? Kevin, do you want to speak to that? He's asking, what was the status of the fight of your memory at the 10-second warning?
At the 10-second warning, it was a very close fight, and you know, they were, you know, just getting prepared to stop it. I mean, it was something.
You were getting prepared to stop the fight.
Well, when I hear the 10-second warning, I know I'd jump in there.
Oh, okay, not because one guy was about to.
Yeah, we have a picture here of somebody and then previous hand and talking about someone that.
And then he ran naked choke. Him and Cardarelli says,
Yeah,
no,
he
it's not
was
something.
trying to get in the rear naked choke, and we were up against the cage, my back out against the cage, and at like 5 seconds before the bell went off, we were standing, and we were up against the cage. He had me up against the cage, but the choke wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like a near finish or anything like that. I mean, not that even would. I mean, they have the allotted time to compete, and
No, I understand. Right, and I understand that. To me, there would be something to, you know, I would have want to know more about.
Like if he had.
If he's about to tap, one was about to tap out at the time, that would be meaningful for me. I'm not saying that's why you change the decision, you know, commission made a mistake, we're changing the decision, we're going to reward the guy who lost it by changing the decision. I'm still have that same train of thought. That having been said, there would be more to think about. Yes, the commissioner said, let's hear the other side. You know, if I heard, well, I had Ramo, he was about to tap out, and then the fight was, ended. Sure. That's, to me, meaningful, to say the very least.
I should be
So wait, so that's, this is Raymond, right? And this is Aiello, just to be sure?
Yeah.
Right?
Right, and you can see that's cross the face.
Yeah.
It's clearly not.
Right.
I don't think that.
Okay. Is that the one we saw earlier?
Yep.
Yes.
And we saw one with his eye, which was,
To be clear for the record, all I was asking is if this was a situation where Aiello, and I didn't hear that in the testimony, was like, wait a second, if I had another couple seconds, I had it ready to tap out, that would have been extremely meaningful to me. That's not what we see here.
Okay, I think that was helpful, thank you for the question.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, has everyone got enough information to move this forward? Consider a motion?
well, I don't mind, I'd like to just ask a question to our council. The way I see this is you've got what's fair, so there wasn't any legal side of this. How was the fight judged in that time frame and everything that Mr. Cardarelli had said? Is one way to look at it, and then another way to look at it is from a legal standpoint. Your point about parachute coming in or something legally is what he is saying. Is that correct? Or as was what was presented last week, legally should it be disqualified because we weren't in the full 5 minutes? So I'm almost presenting that out there as how I'm thinking about this. And if anybody can provide any commentary for me and whether or not I should not be confused about that.
So through the chair, I'll address this. So again, this commission has wide-ranging discretion to interpret its own rules and regulations. You're surely within your discretion to hang your hats on the 3rd division if you want to tie it directly to the regulation and overturn the decision. You're also free to change your mind about your interpretation of that piece. You're also free to say that piece doesn't actually apply, but we still want to overturn the decision because we think that overall the spirit of the rules would require us to overturn it. So I wouldn't worry, too much about whether or not you're squarely within that division. You need to do what's right. You need to do what's fair. You need to do what you think is in your best judgment.
With that said, I would restate what I said earlier in that stating that someone was declared a winner. There was a technical mistake, and it was a mistake. And I think it's unfair to penalize a winner based on a commission mistake. And I do want for the record to state again, with all due respect to, at the time, Chair Krowski and others who ruled, I'm respectful of that. But what I've heard today and saw from the previous meeting, reviewing that, I still can go back to, and I'm thinking of the 3 criteria that we all heard earlier. I don't see the rationale in based on those 3 criteria. And again, with all due respect to the previous decision, I would put forward a motion to award the fight to Mr. Cardarelli.
May I just amend that for you? I think just if we want to reverse our decision from our previous meeting, basically would be a motion.
Yeah. I have to work on my Robert's rules.
Is there a second?
Then if that's my motion, that needs a second.
It needs a second?
And again, this is my first meeting, so I may not be doing this all right away, but before I were to second this, did you have any comments for me on the question that I threw out?
No, I think it's let your conscience be your guide here. There's enough discretion that what you heard, certainly not when you have the benefit of that. I think you're as informed as anyone could be on this matter.
Okay.
I haven't been at the fight, neither was I.
Sure.
Just a procedural matter for the benefit of the new commissioner. You can always second a motion for the purposes of discussion. And then when the vote's taken, you can vote.
So I say.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?